Welcome back, Coinology. The story of the 1995 D1 cent coin begins long before the date stamped on its surface, because every coin carries with it a long chain of history, intention, design evolution, and minting technology that shapes what ultimately ends up in the palm of a collector's hand, and the 1995 D Lincoln cent is no different, even though today it has gained a massive following among hobbyists, investors, and enthusiasts who believe certain rare varieties of this coin can reach staggering values in the collectible market, including astonishing estimates that imagine individual specimens reaching fantastical numbers like $199 million under extremely hypothetical, ultra-rare discovery circumstances, and while the general coin itself is common, the mystique, rumors, mint errors, and dramatic presentations of rare cents have fueled an entire cultural fascination around this particular year and mint mark combination, making it one of the most talked about dates in modern Lincoln cent collecting. The journey starts with understanding the core identity of the 1995 D penny, struck at the Denver Mint, represented by the small yet unmistakable D position just below the date on the obverse side of the coin, and this mint mark, although simple and tiny in appearance, represents a long history of the Denver Mint's contribution to the United States coinage system, a mint that over the years produced billions upon billions of coins, constantly refining the techniques used to strike copper-plated zinc cents in the late 20th century, and the 1995 D penny is part of that long chain of production, carrying the typical composition of 97.5% zinc with a thin outer plating of 2.5% copper, a formula adopted after 1982 to reduce the cost of manufacturing 1-cent pieces, because prior to that the nearly solid copper pennies became too expensive to continue producing as metal prices rose. The standard weight of a correctly manufactured 1995 D penny is 2.5 grams, and this tiny detail becomes extremely important because collectors frequently check weight first when searching for rare transitional errors, off-metal strikes, experimental planchets, and unusual anomalies that could be worth shocking amounts of money, and weighing the coin becomes the first gateway to determine whether the coin in hand is ordinary or potentially extraordinary, since anything that deviates significantly from the standard weight, such as a heavier copper planchet if one escaped from earlier production years, or a lighter error caused by incomplete metal blanks, can indicate the possibility of a genuine mint mistake, and mint errors are the very reason why some coins, even ones as humble as a 1-cent piece, can be catapulted into the realms of unimaginable value, particularly in today's era where collectors are willing to pay astronomical sums for the rarest, most spectacular examples of errors, double dies, misstrikes, off-center coins, and experimental blanks. Yet the story of this coin cannot be told without exploring the design that has become one of the most iconic images in American history, the portrait of the 16th President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, sculpted by Victor David Brenner and first introduced in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, and this classic design remained on the obverse for more than a century, making it the longest-running design in United States coinage, a record unmatched by any other coin type, and this continuity means that the 1995 D penny is not just a coin minted in the mid-1990s, it is part of a larger unbroken tradition of honoring one of the most influential figures in American history, a man whose leadership during the Civil War shaped the nation that would later mint billions of coins bearing his likeness. The obverse of the 1995 D cent features Lincoln facing right, sharply modeled with fine details in his beard, hair, and clothing, although the quality of these details can vary depending on how worn the die was during production, and the inscription "In God We Trust" arcs across the top of the coin, a phrase deeply rooted in American identity since its appearance on coins during the Civil War era, followed by the word liberty to the left of Lincoln, and just to the right sits the year 1995 along with the small D mint mark, signaling its origin at the Denver Mint, and each of these details, while seemingly ordinary, can show dramatic variations when minting errors occur, such as double dies, machine doubling, die deterioration doubling, repunched mint marks, or die cracks, all of which can influence whether a penny is worth only face value or potentially hundreds, thousands, or even in rare, hypothetical scenarios, tens of millions of dollars when collectors believe they have discovered a unique piece. Turning the coin to the reverse reveals the instantly recognizable image of the Lincoln Memorial, designed by Frank Gasparo, introduced in 1959 to replace the wheat ears reverse used from 1909 to 1958, and on the 1995 D penny this memorial appears with delicate vertical columns, the statue of Lincoln faintly visible inside the central space between the pillars, and inscriptions including United States of America at the top, E pluribus unum just below, and the denomination 1 cent prominently placed at the bottom, and each of these elements needed to be sharply struck to create a fully detailed coin, yet in mass production situations, dies wear rapidly, leading to soft details, filled letters, blurry edges, and numerous minor variations that are fascinating to collectors. The value assigned to extraordinary specimens of the 1995 D penny often comes not from normal coins but from extraordinary finds, rare double dies, extreme off-center strikes, major die breaks, broad strikes, dramatic clipped planchets, and rare transitional compositions, and although the standard 1995 double die obverse is famous in the Philadelphia Mint issue, the Denver Mint version has its own series of interesting anomalies that collectors hunt for, even though true major double dies are not widely confirmed for the Denver issue, but this does not stop enthusiasts from exploring every corner of every coin under magnification, seeking the chance of finding an extremely unusual, possibly one-of-a-kind error, and collectors often dream of the possibility that a newly discovered major error could, in theory, be valued at shocking levels, even symbolic numbers like $199 million, a number that reflects not a standard market valuation but the extraordinary impact an unprecedented, legendary discovery could generate if a coin emerged that was so rare, so dramatic, and so historically significant that the global numismatic community would consider it priceless. The market discussion surrounding fantastically valued coins often comes from stories of dramatic auction results, where obscure or previously unknown errors suddenly appear and attract immense attention, driving bidders into competition to secure ownership of something they believe to be unmatched in rarity, and this cultural interest extends to coins like the 1995 D-cent because its widespread availability means countless examples exist in circulation, giving millions of people the chance to check their own change, their old jars of coins, their pocket collections, and their inherited boxes of pennies, hoping to discover the one that might be extraordinary, and this ongoing search keeps the legend of rare pennies alive, fueling curiosity and inspiring collectors to continue examining every detail. The fantastical value you mentioned, imagining a market price of $199 million, becomes part of the mythos that amplifies the excitement surrounding the hunt, allowing collectors to dream about the possibility that some unknown ultra-rare error could still be hiding somewhere, waiting to be found, inspiring treasure hunt style enthusiasm that makes even ordinary pennies feel like potential keys to hidden fortunes. And the story continues. And as we continue deeper into the unfolding story of the 1995 D1 cent coin, the true fascination grows not simply from its physical characteristics but from the strange relationship people have developed with coins over generations, because coins are more than small metal tokens used for transactions, they are tiny historical documents, preserved in metal, stamped by machinery that itself represents entire eras of American industrial evolution, and the 1995 D penny stands as a product of its time, reflecting both the traditional craftsmanship inherited from older minting practices and the high-speed production techniques of the late 20th century, and this fusion of old and new makes each individual penny a kind of manufactured artifact that bridges past and present. The high-speed presses used at the Denver Mint in the 1990s were capable of striking hundreds of coins per minute, a rate that would have been unimaginable to mint workers from the 19th century, and with such speed comes the inevitability of errors, because mechanical devices, even highly engineered machines, are not immune to imperfections, misalignments, worn dies, metal fatigue, vibrations, and human oversight, and these small mechanical hiccups become the moments collectors cherish most, because each flaw represents something unique, something that slipped away from the rigid standards of mass production and became a small anomaly destined to be discovered decades later under the lens of an excited collector. And for the 1995 D-cent, the collective imagination of coin enthusiasts has woven a vast tapestry of stories and expectations about the possibilities that might exist hidden among the millions upon millions of coins struck that year, because the Denver Mint produced such enormous quantities that sorting through them feels like scanning grains of sand for a gemstone, and yet history has repeatedly shown that sometimes, within an ocean of ordinary coins, a single extraordinary piece emerges, an off-metal strike on a different planchet, a major doubled die, a dramatic die break creating a raised blob of metal that collectors nickname a cud, or a broad strike where the collar failed and the coin expanded outward during the strike. Many collectors imagine the possibility that there might still be a 1995 D penny struck on a copper planchet from earlier years, a transitional error that escaped detection, because coins struck in the wrong metal composition are among the most valuable mint errors known in numismatics, and such a discovery would instantly elevate that coin from a mere cent to a treasure whose value could soar beyond the imagination of ordinary collectors, and this kind of scenario is exactly what fuels the mythical discussion of coins that could one day be valued at sums like $199 million. Fantastical, yes, but rooted in the deep excitement collectors feel when considering what might still be hiding undiscovered in jars, boxes, or forgotten bankrolls. But beyond the fantasies of extraordinary value, there is something far more meaningful that keeps people drawn to coins: the sense of connection, the feeling that each coin carries a piece of the era it was made in, and the 1995 D penny holds within it the atmosphere of mid-1990s America, an era of transition, technological advancements, cultural shifts, and the beginning of a new digital age, yet coins remained physical, tangible objects, circulating through millions of hands, witnessing everyday life in a way digital transactions never could, and every scratch, dent, discoloration, and tiny imperfection on a penny tells a story. And when collectors pick up a 1995 D penny, they often wonder where it has been, whose pockets it has traveled in, what purchases it helped complete, and how many decades it spent buried in drawers or lost under car seats, because time transforms even the most common coins into miniature time capsules, and it is this sense of mystery that gives collecting its emotional depth. But even with this emotional connection, the hunger for knowledge and precision remains strong in the numismatic community, and so the characteristics of the 1995 D penny are examined endlessly: its weight, its composition, the exact thickness of its copper plating, the alignment between obverse and reverse, the sharpness of Lincoln's cheekbone or the clarity of the steps on the Lincoln Memorial, the luster, the strike pressure, the die Alignment, the metal flow lines that form when dies age, the presence of die polishing marks or die scratches, and each small detail becomes a clue in determining not only the condition of the coin but whether it might be part of a rare variety or error series. Experienced collectors often use microscopes, high magnification loupes, digital imaging, and lighting techniques to reveal the hidden stories embedded in a coin's surface, because what looks smooth to the naked eye can reveal entire landscapes of detail under magnification, minute die cracks forming lightning-shaped raised lines, tiny chips of metal missing from the die that create bulges on the coin's surface, faint doubling along letters and numbers caused by small shifts in the die during hubbing, all of which elevate the value of a coin far beyond its face value. And speaking of doubling, the 1995 doubled die obverse from the Philadelphia Mint became one of the most famous modern doubled dies, causing many collectors to mistakenly believe that the Denver Mint version might also hold a dramatic doubled die waiting to be discovered, and despite the lack of confirmed major doubled dies for the Denver issue, the excitement remains, because the possibility, even if remote, keeps collectors searching relentlessly, lifting hopes that one day a major new variety might be found, a variety so significant that it could rewrite the numismatic history of the 1995 D penny, and such a discovery could ignite a frenzy within the collecting world, attracting global attention, sparking bidding wars, and transforming a single penny into a legendary artifact. And legends matter in numismatics, because stories shape value just as much as rarity does, and the idea that somewhere out there might exist a 1995 D penny with an error so dramatic that it could command a hypothetical value of $199 million is a story that captures the imagination, not because such a price reflects market reality but because it symbolizes the dream that every collector holds, the dream of discovering something unique, something no one else has seen, something that could change the story of a coin forever. And the more people talk about rare pennies selling for millions in auctions, the more ordinary collectors become inspired to check their own coins. And this enthusiasm makes the 1995 D penny a centerpiece of countless discussions in online forums, YouTube videos, coin groups, and collector communities where people share images, opinions, discoveries, and theories, fueling a global conversation that turns a simple common coin into a powerful symbol of the thrill of discovery. And the story of the 1995 D penny grows larger with every conversation, every rumor, every claim of a new error, every discussion of market values, and every collector who decides to search just one more roll. Because hope is the most powerful currency in the world of coin collecting, and the 1995 D penny has become a coin powered by hope, by curiosity, by possibility, and by the never-ending desire to uncover the extraordinary hidden within the ordinary. And the journey continues. And as we move even further into the unfolding narrative of the 1995 D 1-cent coin, the story begins expanding beyond the physical object itself and into the collective psychology that surrounds it. Because the fascination people have with these small copper-plated coins comes not merely from their monetary value but from the deeper emotional and cultural layers that have built up around them over generations, turning the humble penny into a symbol of persistence, patience, and the pursuit of unexpected treasures. And the 1995 D Lincoln cent is a perfect example of how something ordinary can evolve into something extraordinary simply through the attention and imagination of the people who study it, collect it, and dream about what secrets it might hold. In numismatics, every coin becomes a point of connection between the present and the past, between the collector and the mint worker who long ago oversaw the machines that shaped, struck, and released billions of coins into circulation. And when examining a 1995 D penny, it's easy to forget that behind each tiny detail, each ridge of the rim, each letter in the inscriptions, each line of Lincoln's portrait, stood layers of planning, engineering, artistry, and industrial precision, each step influenced by the evolution of the minting process itself. And understanding this long chain of craftsmanship only deepens the mystique of every small variation that collectors obsess over. In the 1990s, the Denver Mint operated at incredible speeds, striking billions of cents every year, and within this massive production scale, the machinery inevitably encountered wear and stress, as dies gradually deteriorated, producing softer details, more prominent die scratches, widening cracks, and subtle distortions that began to appear in different areas of the coin. And these mechanical imperfections formed the basis for generations of collectors who would later try to catalog, classify, document, and debate every tiny feature on the 1995 D coin, from the thickness of the lettering to the faint doubling on the date, to the presence of tiny die chips around Lincoln's eyes, beard, collar, or the memorial columns on the reverse. What makes the pursuit so fascinating is that most of these anomalies were never intentional, they were simply byproducts of the relentless efficiency demanded by modern minting. And yet these accidental quirks became the very things that would give the 1995 D penny its personality, setting it apart from millions of others struck the same year, and transforming it from an everyday object into something that tells a unique story, because no two coins ever age or are minted exactly the same way. And when people look for value in coins, especially in modern pennies like the 1995 D, what they are really searching for is uniqueness. That tiny detail that makes a coin not just another product of mass manufacture but something rare, something distinguishable, something that can be seen, documented, and talked about, because rarity is what transforms a coin from a common cent into an object of desire. And even though most 1995 D pennies are worth only face value, the hope that an extraordinary example still lies undiscovered keeps the search alive. The thrill of this search is intensified by the countless stories of collectors, ordinary people, who found extremely valuable coins by sheer accident, coins that were sitting unnoticed in a drawer or embedded in a jar of spare change, discoveries that changed the lives of their owners, and these stories fuel the imagination of millions of people who dream of holding a coin with unimaginable worth, perhaps even a coin valued at sums like $199 million, a figure so dramatically beyond the realm of normal coin valuations that it becomes a kind of legend, a symbol of ultimate rarity, the kind of hypothetical value placed not on the typical market price but on the idea of finding a coin so unique that it transcends traditional collecting. And this dream is part of what keeps the 1995 D penny relevant in modern times, not because any example has actually reached such a valuation but because collectors believe that history has shown, time after time, that the minting process occasionally produces mistakes of such incredible rarity that the world of numismatics cannot ignore them, mistakes that elevate coins from mere currency to historical artifacts, and the possibility that such a mistake might still exist keeps the 1995 cent forever shrouded in a sense of possibility. As collectors continue examining these coins, the process becomes almost ritualistic, beginning with the weight measurement, since the proper weight of 2.5 grams is one of the major indicators of authenticity and standard composition, and any deviations from this weight, especially significant deviations, trigger a deeper investigation, because a heavier reading might indicate a copper composition rather than zinc, and a lighter reading might signal an improperly manufactured planchet, and both situations can lead to discoveries that redefine the coin's value dramatically. And after weighing comes the visual inspection, where collectors examine luster, strike sharpness, rim formations, and the presence of any unusual marks, and then comes the microscopic analysis, where the surface transforms from a tiny object into an entirely new landscape, revealing microscopic ridges, distortions, abrasions, flowlines, and raised features that were invisible to the naked eye, each offering clues about how the coin was struck, how long the die had been used, whether the die was damaged, and whether the coin itself might hold a variety that others have overlooked. Many collectors find themselves lost in this microscopic world, captivated by the tiny imperfections that appear like geological formations on the surface of the coin, and this microscopic universe makes each 1995 D penny feel unique, giving each specimen a personality, a story, a fingerprint of its own that no other coin shares, and the more magnification reveals, the more collectors appreciate just how intricate even the simplest coin truly is. The community surrounding this coin has grown as well, as people trade images, specific die markers, potential varieties, and expert opinions in online spaces, and every time someone posts a new close-up image of a 1995 D penny, thousands of enthusiasts engage in discussion, analysis, debate, and speculation, all of which contributes to the ongoing evolution of the coin's legacy, and the conversation never truly ends, because new varieties are occasionally discovered long after coins were minted, sometimes decades later, proving that the world of numismatics is never static. In all of this, the history, the psychology, the craftsmanship, the technology, the imagination, the speculation feeds into the enduring appeal of the 1995 D penny, turning it into far more than just a cent, but rather a symbol of the possibilities that coins represent, opportunities for discovery that may be found anywhere, even in the most ordinary-looking penny that has been sitting in a drawer for years. And this sense of possibility is the beating heart of coin collecting, the reason people look, the reason people search, and the reason coins like the 1995 D continue to captivate generation after generation. And so the journey continues. And as this unfolding narrative of the 1995 D 1 cent coin moves even deeper into the layers of meaning, history, and speculation that surround it, the story begins to reveal an even broader picture of how a seemingly simple object can hold an entire universe of fascination, because the 1995 D penny does not exist in isolation but within a long timeline of American coinage, a network of decisions, technological adaptations, metal shortages, minting shifts, economic influences, and collector cultures that have shaped its identity long before it ever entered circulation. And by understanding these underlying forces, the coin itself becomes a lens through which we can view not only numismatics but the evolution of American life in the 20th century. Every coin minted during the 1990s was shaped by the economic climate of the time, a period where copper prices were no longer stable enough to justify full copper coinage, which is why the US Mint had already shifted to a zinc core with a copper coating years earlier, and the 1995 D penny reflects this cost-effective composition. Yet beneath that thin copper plating lies a history of technological adjustments, because the minting machines used in Denver had to apply just the right pressure, temperature, and strike alignment to create a coin that maintained visual clarity while using less expensive metals. And this delicate balance is one of the reasons why so many subtle variations appear on coins from this era, as the mint constantly worked to maintain quality while mass-producing billions of cents. And because of this mass production, collectors today often wonder how many 1995 D pennies escaped the mint with errors that no one at the time noticed, because in an era without the intense digital scrutiny we have now, many minor or even major errors could have slipped through the machinery unnoticed, quietly entering circulation, passing through hands, pockets, and cash registers before eventually being tossed into storage, forgotten for decades. And this idea that there may still be undiscovered treasures hiding in plain sight is what gives the 1995 D penny a kind of timeless excitement. There is something poetic about the idea that a coin minted quickly and cheaply, intended for everyday use, could one day be the object of intense fascination. And in the numismatic world, it is often the coins that were meant to be the most disposable that end up becoming the most valuable when errors occur, because Rarity is born not from intention but from accident, and every accident in the minting process creates a unique artifact, an anomaly that no machine was designed to produce, a tiny disturbance in the mechanical repetition that becomes a celebrated masterpiece for collectors. The 1995 D penny has become a symbol of this paradox. A coin that most people overlook but that collectors scrutinize with microscopic detail, searching every line of Lincoln's portrait, every edge of the memorial columns, every letter of the inscriptions for signs of doubling, cracks, chips, die polishing, or off-metal composition, and these details become the very source of excitement that drives collectors to examine coin after coin, year after year, because the joy of discovery is endless, and the possibility of finding something extraordinary keeps the journey alive. The psychological element behind this search is powerful, because humans are naturally drawn to the idea of hidden treasure, and every 1995 D penny becomes a potential mystery waiting to be unlocked, a small metal riddle that might contain a clue to something rare, and this sense of mystery transforms the act of coin searching into something more meaningful than a hobby. It becomes a pursuit of history, an exploration of the unknown, and a connection to the countless individuals who previously handled the coin without realizing its potential significance. And the more collectors examine these coins, the more they understand that even the smallest details tell a story, such as the tiny raised bumps from die deterioration, the thinning of Lincoln's jacket lines from late die states, the distortion of lettering from increasing die use, the swelling around the rim as metal flow lines develop, the faint rotation of the die that causes alignment shifts, and these tiny imperfections become markers that help experts trace the life cycle of each die pair, constructing a timeline of minting conditions through the evidence left on the coins themselves. The community that surrounds the 1995 D penny has grown larger than anyone could have predicted, with collectors exchanging discoveries, discussing potential new varieties, sharing high-resolution images, performing metallurgical tests, weighing coins down to decimal precision, studying strike pressure effects, and comparing hundreds of specimens to identify die pairings. And this collaborative effort turns the 1995 D penny from a solitary object into a collective project, a shared endeavor that binds together thousands of enthusiasts across countries, languages, and generations. And because of this global attention, even the wildest speculations about extraordinary values, such as a hypothetical 1995 D penny reaching an astronomical figure like $199 million, take on a kind of cultural symbolism within the numismatic community, not because anyone truly expects such a value in normal market conditions, but because this number represents the dream of discovering the impossible, the fantasy of finding a coin so uniquely flawed, so historically significant, so dramatically different from its peers, that it becomes priceless in the eyes of collectors, and this dream is what keeps millions of people searching, hoping that they might someday uncover the coin that rewrites the story of the 1995 D penny. And each time someone finds a minor die crack or doubling on their 1995 D cent, they feel a spark of excitement, because even the smallest discovery reinforces the idea that this coin still has secrets to reveal, and one can never truly know what lies beneath the surface until the coin is examined carefully, patiently, and scientifically. And with every new discovery, the coin's legacy expands, as more people learn about the potential hidden within this small, copper-colored piece of metal. And so the narrative of the 1995 D penny grows, layer by layer, detail by detail, generation by generation, forming an ever-evolving story that continues to pull collectors deeper into its world, because even after decades of study, the excitement remains, the questions remain, and the hope remains, and as long as coins continue to circulate, continue to be found in drawers, in jars, in bankrolls, and in forgotten collections, the story of the 1995 D penny will continue to unfold, carrying with it the dreams, the curiosity, and the passion of everyone who searches for meaning in the small things that others overlook. And the journey continues. And as the story of the 1995 D penny extends even further, the narrative becomes richer, more textured, and more intertwined with the broader human fascination for objects that carry traces of history, because every collector who picks up a 1995 D cent adds a new layer of meaning to it, a new perspective, a new interpretation, and this ongoing engagement transforms the coin from a piece of minted metal into a living artifact that continues evolving long after it left the Denver Mint. And the more people study it, the more dimensions its story gains, turning it into something far more important than anyone at the Mint ever imagined while it was still being struck in massive quantities at high speed. The Denver Mint employees who worked the shifts during the production of the 1995 D cents likely never imagined that these coins would someday be examined under digital microscopes decades later, or that collectors around the world would debate the meaning of tiny metal distortions that formed due to routine wear on dies. Yet this is one of the fascinating evolutions of numismatics, the transformation of the ordinary into the extraordinary through the persistent curiosity of collectors, historians, hobbyists, and enthusiasts who refuse to let even the smallest coin go unnoticed. And when thinking about the 1995 D penny, the striking process itself becomes a topic of great fascination, because the moment of minting, the split second when the die and the planchet collide under immense pressure, determines everything about the coin's identity, from the clarity of Lincoln's portrait to the sharpness of the lettering, the smoothness of the fields, the definition of the memorial steps, and even the tiny metal flow lines that develop during the strike. And understanding this moment helps collectors appreciate why certain errors occur and why some coins end up with features that no machine or mint worker ever intended. In that single moment of impact between die and planchet, Thousands of possibilities exist, and while most strikes produce consistent, standard coins, every once in a while something goes slightly wrong. Maybe the die shifts a fraction of a millimeter, maybe the planchet isn't perfectly centered, maybe some debris is stuck on the die surface, maybe a die crack expands suddenly due to metal fatigue, or maybe a planchet of the wrong composition accidentally enters the press. And each of these small disruptions can lead to the creation of a coin that collectors decades later will treat like a piece of treasure. And it is this possibility, this tiny opening in the rigid world of mechanical repetition, that gives coins like the 1995 D penny their allure, because while millions of these coins exist, only a few may contain the rare errors, anomalies, or unexpected compositions that transform them into something valuable, and the rarity of such discoveries is precisely what feeds the imagination of collectors, encouraging them to examine millions of coins in hopes of finding the one in a million specimen that defies expectations. As collectors handle the 1995 D penny, they often reflect on the fact that the coin has traveled through countless hands, pockets, wallets, and cash registers over the years, and each point of contact added a microscopic mark, a tiny scratch or abrasion, a slight change in luster, all of which contribute to the unique surface characteristics of each specimen, and this long journey through circulation adds emotional value to the coin's physical history, because in a sense, the coin carries traces of the everyday lives of the people who unknowingly handled it. This feeling that a coin is not just an object but a witness to time makes even a common penny feel special, because collectors understand that every coin has survived countless moments that a piece of paper or a digital transaction never could, and the 1995 D penny, being decades old now, holds a kind of quiet resilience that speaks to its durability as a piece of history, even if its material composition was chosen for efficiency rather than long-term preservation. And as collectors continue studying and discussing the 1995 D penny, they often find themselves amazed by how much detail is packed into such a small surface area, because Lincoln's portrait alone contains complex sculptural lines that change dramatically depending on die state, strike pressure, and die polishing, and the reverse side with the Lincoln Memorial presents an intricate architectural depiction that can reveal countless variations when examined at high magnification, such as extra column lines, distorted memorial steps, filled letters, weakened edges, and various types of doubling that can appear due to die fatigue. And it is here, in the microscopic realm, that collectors often feel the deepest connection to the 1995 D penny, because it is under magnification that the coin transforms from a familiar object into a world of patterns, textures, and hidden marks, almost like a piece of art whose details grow more interesting the closer one looks, and the more collectors explore this world, the more they appreciate how every minting imperfection tells a story about the conditions under which the coin was made. This microscopic universe of the 1995 D penny also feeds into the legends, the myths, and the speculative stories that surround rare coins, stories in which unimaginable values are assigned to hypothetical discoveries, stories of a penny worth tens of millions or even the near mythical $199 million, a number that collectors use not because it is realistic but because it represents the idea that there are still mysteries left in the world of coins, still unknown treasures waiting to be found, and this symbolic figure becomes a metaphor for the ultimate dream of discovery. And dreams are a powerful force in numismatics, because they fuel the endless enthusiasm that drives collectors to keep searching, to keep examining, to keep learning, and the 1995 D penny has become one of those coins that inspires curiosity far beyond its original purpose, becoming not just a currency but a symbol of possibility, a reminder that extraordinary things can emerge from the most ordinary places. The global coin community plays a major role in sustaining this excitement, with collectors exchanging findings, offering appraisals, debating new potential varieties, photographing their best examples, and contributing to the ongoing documentation of the 1995 descent, and through this collaboration, knowledge about the coin continues to grow, expanding the story of this 1 cent piece into something far bigger than its size would suggest. And this shared passion is part of what makes the 1995 D penny so compelling, because no matter how many collectors examine it, no matter how many discussions take place, no matter how many photos are shared, the feeling persists that there are still more secrets to uncover, more rare anomalies hidden somewhere in circulation or tucked away in someone's old coin jar, waiting for the day they finally come into the light. And that day, when someone discovers something previously unknown, will only add another chapter to the ever-growing story of the 1995 D penny, a coin that proves time and time again that the smallest objects can hold the biggest mysteries, and that sometimes, the world of numismatics is as much about imagination and possibility as it is about metal and minting. And the journey continues. And as the story of the 1995 D Lincoln cent continues to grow deeper, collectors around the world begin to realize that this tiny copper-plated zinc coin is far more than just a piece of currency. It is a window into the technological, economic, and artistic transformation of the United States Mint in the mid-1990s. When people hold it in their hand, they are not simply touching a 19mm disc of metal weighing around 2.5 grams, they are touching the very legacy of an era where America stood between the end of the Cold War and the beginning of the digital age, a moment where coins still carried symbolism far beyond their monetary value. This is why the 1995D has been the center of attention for those who understand the deeper meaning behind mint marks, die varieties, and the subtle visual clues left behind by the die-making machinery of the Denver Mint, each clue acting like a fingerprint, each imperfection turning an ordinary object into a legendary collectible that could command prices reaching imaginary heights in fantasy discussions, inspiring collectors, storytellers, and dreamers alike. The fascination only grows stronger when you begin to analyze how the Denver Mint in 1995 worked, with high-speed presses striking hundreds of coins per minute, copper-plated zinc planchets flying down steel channels, each ready to be squeezed between hardened steel dies with thousands of pounds of pressure. The obverse die featured Abraham Lincoln, a design first created by Victor David Brenner in 1909 to mark the centennial of Lincoln's birth, while the reverse displayed the Lincoln Memorial design introduced in 1959 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the 16th president's birth. Every detail, from the angles of Lincoln's cheek to the microscopic columns of the memorial, was engraved with precision, yet mass production always leaves room for tiny variations, and it is often those microscopic variations that turn into million-dollar tales among passionate numismatists. Even a tiny die crack, a light doubling, or subtle spreading of the letters Liberty or In God We Trust can transform a simple penny into a legendary coin. This is why collectors obsess over magnification, lighting, and angle, chasing the dream of finding a once-in-a-lifetime 1995D treasure hiding in an old jar, a forgotten drawer, or an inherited box of coins. The idea that a 1995D cent could be associated with a mythical value of $199 million may sound unbelievable, but in the world of storytelling, motivation, and dramatic numismatic discussions, it symbolizes the thrill of the chase. The reality is that rare errors, unique misstrikes, dramatic die breaks, and untouched mint state examples in the highest known grades can indeed draw intense competition among collectors. This competition pushes values up, and while normal 1995D cents are common, the rarest examples feel like keys to an alternate history, becoming the centerpieces of auctions, documentaries, and collector communities. People love imagining that inside their pocket change lies a coin whose story is worth more than financial value, worth the excitement, the mystery, and the idea that history sometimes hides in plain sight. As the camera moves in your video, the narration slowly guides the viewer through what makes the 1995D such an interesting relic. Imagine showing slow-motion footage of a penny rotating against a black background, every reflection on its copper surface shimmering like a planet drifting through space. You take your audience into the microscopic world of die polish lines, rim details, mint luster, the flow lines that reveal how the metal moved when struck, and the shine that only original mint surfaces possess. You speak about how collectors evaluate strike sharpness, contact marks, and the importance of preservation. You explain the difference between circulated and uncirculated examples, why a higher grade transforms a common coin into something elite, and how the Denver Mint's production quality affects the existence of ultra-high-grade specimens. You emphasize how collectors chase grading labels like MS67, MS68, and even the nearly impossible MS69, and how even a slight imperfection can take thousands of dollars off the value of a top-tier coin. Every detail becomes a chapter in the grand story of this 1995D cent. Then the script dives deeper into the psychology of collecting, how people do not simply seek money, they seek discovery. A person who finds a rare coin feels a connection with history that cannot be bought. They feel chosen, like the universe placed a hidden treasure in their hands for them to uncover. That feeling is stronger than any price tag. This is why videos about rare coins go viral, why millions of people start searching through jars of pennies, and why the 1995D cent remains a powerful symbol of the dream of finding unimaginable value in ordinary places. Even if the market value described is part of a dramatic narration rather than reality, the emotional connection is very real. The thrill is real. The excitement is real. The script continues with you speaking about how the 1995D cent carries the legacy of Abraham Lincoln, how the man who fought for unity, equality, and the preservation of a nation now appears on coins touched by millions of hands. You highlight how the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse symbolizes strength, democracy, and the endurance of ideals. You explain how coin design is not random, it is art carefully chosen to represent national identity. The placement of Lincoln's portrait facing right, the inscriptions, the mint mark, the spacing of the letters, the relief of the design all contribute to the symbolic power of the coin. Even the small d mint mark under the date carries meaning. It tells a story of where the coin was born, under what conditions, and with what technological limitations. This single letter is like a passport stamp from a historical moment. As the narration flows deeper, the viewer becomes immersed in the journey of the cent from raw metal to circulating currency. You describe how giant coils of zinc were cut into planchets, how copper plating was applied through an electrochemical process, how unfinished discs traveled through conveyors, tumblers, and polishers, and finally how they were struck into coins with breathtaking speed. The sounds of metal striking metal echo through the mint like thunder, thousands of coins being born every minute, each with its own microscopic identity. When viewers imagine this process, they begin to appreciate the artistry behind something they often overlook. A penny becomes more than a penny. It becomes a relic of industry, history, and craftsmanship. And then you slowly transition into how the coin made its way into the hands of millions, used in stores, dropped in sidewalks, saved by children, forgotten in pockets, thrown into fountains for wishes, stored in piggy banks, or passed from person to person without anyone realizing that one extraordinary example among them could transform an ordinary life. This is the heart of the script, the emotional idea that somewhere out there, a rare 1995 cent might still be waiting to be discovered, untouched, unrecognized, hiding in plain sight, ready to create a story that lasts forever. As the story of the 1995 Lincoln cent continues to unfold, the narrative begins guiding the viewer into a deeper emotional territory, exploring not only the coin's physical characteristics but the invisible connections it creates between generations. You let the audience feel that coins are not simply metal objects, they are carriers of human memory. Every 1995 penny that survived decades of circulation carries the fingerprints of time, the touch of countless hands, the weight of forgotten stories. Some were used in children's lunchboxes, some were exchanged for newspapers, some dropped under seats of old cars, some slipped into vending machines, some tossed into wishing fountains under moonlit nights. Each one silently witnessed the small, everyday moments of American life. That is the extraordinary beauty hidden behind the most ordinary-looking coin. The viewer is then taken into a slow cinematic sequence, imagining a 1995 penny rolling across a table, illuminated by a warm golden light. The narrator speaks softly but with intensity, explaining how the shine of a coin is not just a reflection of metal, it is a reminder of the era it was born into. In 1995, America was transitioning, technology was emerging, the internet was spreading, industries were shifting, and culture was evolving. The cent, even though small in value, was still crucial in daily transactions. People used pennies constantly, from paying taxes to buying groceries, from leaving them as tips to storing them in jars. The 1995 cent became part of the foundation of everyday commerce. When audiences reflect on this, they begin to appreciate how even the smallest denomination can hold a powerful historical footprint. You dive deeper into the significance of the D Mint mark, tracing the legacy of the Denver Mint back through decades of American coin production. You describe how Denver, surrounded by the Rocky Mountains, became one of the most efficient and advanced coin-producing facilities in the world. The viewer envisions massive machines, robotic arms, conveyor belts moving with perfect rhythm, and presses powerful enough to strike billions of coins in a single year. Inside that massive industrial world, the 1995 cent emerged, one coin among millions, yet each one with subtle individual variations that would one day excite collectors searching for hidden treasures. You explain how, even in a facility capable of producing perfectly uniform coins, slight imperfections are inevitable, and those imperfections often become the very traits that collectors obsess over decades later. The narration moves into a philosophical tone, discussing how value is created. A penny is worth 1 cent economically speaking. But emotionally, historically, symbolically, and culturally, its worth multiplies when people attach meaning to it. A rare error penny can suddenly become priceless to the right collector. A perfectly preserved example graded at the highest levels can inspire competition and excitement. A coin found in pocket change can ignite a lifelong passion for numismatics. Value is not always measured in dollars, sometimes it is measured in the thrill of discovery or the beauty of craftsmanship. This section of the script encourages viewers to think beyond money and see coins as miniature time capsules. As the video transitions visually, you guide the audience into understanding how grading companies evaluate coins. You dive into the world of magnification, precision lighting, and expert examiners who judge every tiny detail, from luster to strike strength, from microscopic marks to rim condition. You create a vivid image of how a coin is placed inside a transparent slab, sealed forever with a label displaying its grade, date, mint mark, and certification number. The 1995 cent, when preserved in high mint state grades, becomes more than a coin, it becomes a preserved artifact, untouched by time. You describe how collectors treasure these slabs, storing them in special cases, vaults, or display boxes, treating each one like a precious relic from history. The script then begins to build emotional intensity, exploring the timeless desire humans have to find something extraordinary in the ordinary. You narrate stories of people who checked their change every day, hoping to stumble upon a rare variety. Some searched for years. Some found coins worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. Some passed down jars of pennies from generation to generation. The idea that a simple 1995 penny could hold enormous value, real or symbolic, fuels a dream shared by millions. People love the possibility that something as small as a penny could transform their life story. That sense of possibility is what keeps collectors searching and keeps videos like this engaging, inspiring, and unforgettable. You then transition to a more dramatic tone, imagining scenes of hidden treasures waiting to be found. You speak about how in attics, basements, antique shops, forgotten boxes, storage units, desk drawers, and old albums, millions of pennies remain untouched. Some might contain rare errors. Some might be in pristine condition, untouched by circulation. Some might be the exact coins collectors dream of. You build anticipation by reminding the audience that the world is full of hidden gems and that the 1995 D cent is one of the coins people should never overlook when searching through loose change. The script becomes even more immersive as you describe how collectors from around the world trade, buy, sell, and discuss rare pennies online and at coin shows. The 1995 D becomes a symbol of this global community, a community built not just on financial profit, but on curiosity, passion, and shared knowledge. You speak about the conversations, the debates, the discoveries, the stories exchanged across forums, groups, and conventions. You highlight how a single penny can connect people from different countries, backgrounds, and ages, all united by a shared love for numismatics. The viewers begin to feel like they are part of something bigger, a worldwide family of collectors seeking meaning in small metal discs. And then, as the narration slows again, you emphasize how the 1995 D cent represents a bridge between generations. A grandfather passing down a coin to his grandchild. A parent teaching a child how to inspect a penny under a light. A collector gifting a rare find to someone just beginning their journey. These moments become lifelong memories, making coins deeply personal objects. The 1995 D is not just a collectible, it becomes a symbol of heritage, bonding, and the passing of knowledge from one generation to the next. In every family that collects coins, stories are preserved not only in words but in metal. The script continues with a cinematic reflection on Abraham Lincoln's role in American history. You describe how his face, engraved onto the cent for more than a century, represents unity, leadership, equality, and resilience. You remind the audience that when they hold a Lincoln cent, they hold a piece of the legacy of one of the greatest leaders in history. The 1995 D, bearing Lincoln's likeness, becomes a continuation of that legacy. Viewers begin to see the coin not as a tiny object but as a representation of American ideals. And as the story of the 1995 D Lincoln cent unfolds even deeper, the viewer is invited to step into a world where every detail of the coin transforms into a clue, every reflection becomes a memory, every imperfection becomes a signature left by history itself. The narration slows, allowing the audience to visualize the coin under a powerful light, rotating slowly, the copper surface glowing with shades of gold, orange, and deep red. You describe how the decades have shaped this tiny coin, polishing some with the touch of time, preserving others in forgotten drawers where dust guarded them like ancient treasures waiting to be rediscovered. This simple penny becomes a universe of meaning, where even the tiniest scratch speaks 1,000 silent stories. You guide the viewers into imagining what it feels like to search through hundreds, maybe thousands of pennies, eyes sharp, heart hopeful, fingers brushing across the smooth metal surfaces as if trying to feel destiny itself. The thrill is not just in finding a valuable coin, the thrill is in the possibility. Each penny becomes a small mystery, a sealed envelope of history that could contain anything from an ordinary, worn-out cent to a rare gem with a hidden error worth a fortune in collector excitement. The 1995 D becomes a symbol of that possibility, a reminder that sometimes the smallest things hold the largest surprises. As the video continues, the atmosphere becomes almost poetic, the camera slowly zooming into the details of the coin's obverse, where Lincoln's profile is struck with such precision that even the smallest lines in his coat reveal the artistry behind the design. You speak about how the sculpting of Lincoln's face represents dignity, integrity, and resilience, all qualities that defined his leadership during one of America's most challenging periods. Each curve of the design carries artistic intention. The texture of the hair, the shape of the beard, the distinctive high cheekbone, all carved into steel dies before being pressed onto billions of coins. And yet, somehow, every 1995 D cent still feels unique, each one carrying a slightly different strike pressure, slightly different luster patterns, and microscopic differences produced naturally during the minting process. For collectors, these are not flaws, they are the fingerprints of the mint itself. You then shift into describing how rare varieties and miniature errors can turn the 1995 D cent into something the entire numismatic community talks about. Perhaps there is a faint doubling somewhere on the date. Perhaps there is a slight die dent near the rim. Perhaps the copper plating reacted differently, leaving tiny shadows of discoloration that create a unique appearance. The viewer begins to imagine examining the coin with a magnifying glass, rotating it slowly under a bright lamp, trying to detect the smallest detail that could make the coin stand out from the millions minted that year. This moment of magnified searching becomes almost meditative, an experience of focus, patience, and excitement that only true collectors understand. As the narration flows, you describe the invisible journey the coin takes after leaving the Denver Mint. You speak about how coins travel across cities, states, pockets, machines, and generations, each one gathering a lifetime of human experiences. A 1995 D penny may have been used in a child's first purchase, a bus ticket, a snack at school, a drink from a vending machine, or a charity box donation. It may have lived in a bank vault for years, or sat forgotten in a jar, motionless, as life moved on around it. Now, decades later, when collectors look at that same coin, they see not only metal but the passage of time itself. This transformation from circulation to collection is what gives coins a second life. You then deepen the emotional tone, reflecting on how society changes but coins remain, like tiny monuments that resist the passing of eras. You remind the viewer that people in 1995 were living in a very different world, one without smartphones, one where computers were just beginning to enter homes, one where life was simpler in many ways. The 1995 penny became one of the everyday tools people used in that transitional age. Its value stretched farther. Its presence was more constant. And holding a 1995 penny today creates an invisible bridge between 1990s America and the present, linking two eras with the silent strength of copper and zinc. The audience is then drawn into a reflective moment, imagining how the coin might have looked the day it was minted, fresh, brilliant, glowing with bright mint luster. You describe the mesmerizing flow lines that shimmer across the surface, the perfect circular rim, the crisp edges of the lettering, and the sharp strike that defines Lincoln's features and the Lincoln Memorial's columns with absolute clarity. This perfect condition, preserved only in coins that never entered circulation, becomes the dream condition collectors chase. The rarity of such pristine examples increases their symbolic value, making each high-grade 1995 cent a tiny masterpiece of American craftsmanship. As the narrative grows more immersive, you guide the audience into the world of auctions and high-stakes bidding. You describe scenes of collectors raising paddles, eyes focused, pulses heightened, competing passionately for coins that represent both rarity and history. The 1995 in its highest grades or with extraordinary errors, becomes a star in these moments. The tension rises as auctioneers call out escalating bids, voices echoing through large rooms filled with showcases, velvet trays, and glass displays holding treasures of incredible beauty. In these scenes, coins become art, status, history, and passion combined into one. You then shift the focus to the everyday dreamer, someone at home, watching the video, maybe holding a jar of old pennies. You speak directly to that viewer's imagination, telling them that the next great discovery could be theirs. Maybe their jar contains a rare 1995 Maybe they will find a penny with an unusual error. Maybe they will uncover a coin in near-perfect condition. The script allows them to feel that they are part of the adventure, part of the hunt, part of the timeless tradition of exploring pocket change for hidden treasure. The narration slows as you reflect on the emotional connection people form with coins. Many collectors remember the exact moment they found their first valuable coin. They remember the excitement, the disbelief, the rush of joy, the spark that ignited their passion. Coins become part of personal history, stored not just in albums but in memory. The 1995 becomes another symbol of these unforgettable experiences that turn ordinary people into lifelong collectors. And as the scene fades, the audience is left with the powerful realization that the 1995 Lincoln cent is not just a 1-cent coin. It is a story, a journey, a relic, a mystery, a piece of art, and a symbol of the endless search for meaning and discovery hidden in everyday life. And as the journey of the 1995 Lincoln cent continues, the viewer is pulled even deeper into the world where a simple 1-cent coin transforms into a symbol of discovery, history, and the unexpected wonders hidden in everyday objects. The camera slowly drifts across a close-up shot of the penny's surface, capturing every small groove, every light reflection, the subtle waves of mint luster that dance under the warm glow of a lamp. You describe how every coin ever struck carries its own personality, some bright and bold, some aged and worn, some scarred by time, some preserved like untouched artwork. The 1995 cent becomes a character with a story to tell, inviting collectors and dreamers to listen to its silent memories. You take the audience into a deeper reflection about how a single penny can impact someone's life in ways people rarely imagine. A child who finds a shiny 1995 cent on the ground feels a spark of curiosity. A beginner collector, flipping through coins for the first time, feels a jolt of excitement when they spot a coin from the 1990s and wonder what makes it special. A seasoned collector feels nostalgia when holding a penny from decades ago, remembering their own early days of searching through pocket change. You explain how the emotional connection to coins grows slowly, like the turning of pages in a book, with each new discovery adding another chapter to a collector's personal story. As the narration deepens, you guide the viewers through the microscopic universe carved into the penny's design. You describe the raised lettering of Liberty as if it were carved mountains, the date 1995 as if it were a historical monument, and the tiny mint mark as if it were a compass pointing toward the history of the Denver Mint. The lines of Lincoln's coat appear like flowing ridges. The steps of the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse look like ancient stairways that lead not just to a building, but to a symbol of democracy and endurance. You allow the viewer to feel that even the tiniest part of the coin holds meaning, placed intentionally by artists who understood that small details matter more than the human eye often notices. The narration transitions into a more dramatic and emotional tone, exploring how time affects coins the same way it affects people. A penny struck in 1995 has now witnessed almost 3 decades of history. It has traveled through pockets during joyful moments, stressful moments, quiet moments. It might have been in the hand of someone celebrating good news, someone paying for a meal, someone donating to a cause, someone making a wish. When the viewer imagines these human moments, the penny suddenly feels alive. It becomes a witness to life, a tiny artifact that silently observes the world around it while performing its simple purpose. You shift to another powerful image, showing how pennies gather in jars and containers over the years. You describe how families often set aside jars filled with random change, believing someday they will count them, someday they will sort them, someday they will search through them. But those jars often sit untouched, like small treasure chests waiting for the right moment to be opened. Inside these jars may be coins no one has seen in decades, rare dates, misprints, errors, perfect condition specimens, and yes, perhaps an extraordinary 1995 D cent that escaped circulation. The idea that someone could open an old jar and find a rare piece of history creates a sense of anticipation that makes coin collecting magical. Then the script draws the viewer into the world of die varieties and errors, showing how small mistakes during production become major sources of fascination. You explain how a slight doubling on the date can cause excitement. How a tiny die crack running along the edge of Lincoln's coat can become a unique identifying mark. How a faint line or indentation can differentiate one coin from the millions produced. These tiny imperfections, invisible to most, become treasures to collectors. The 1995 D penny becomes a symbol of how mistakes are not always flaws, they can be rare gifts that elevate a coin from ordinary to extraordinary. You bring the audience closer to the emotional heartbeat of the collecting community, describing how people gather online and in person to share photos, discuss finds, ask questions, and celebrate discoveries. The 1995 D becomes a recurring topic. Someone shows a penny they found, someone else asks about its condition, another comments on its luster, another notes a tiny die mark. The community becomes alive with energy, passion, and connection. Even strangers become united by a shared interest, proving that coins do more than sit in pockets, they bring people together. The narration grows even more cinematic as you describe a moment where someone sits at a table late at night, sorting through a pile of coins under a lamp. Their hands move slowly, turning each penny, examining its date, checking for differences. They feel the rhythm of the search, the joy of curiosity, the glow of possibility. The room is quiet except for the soft clinking of coins. The person's heart beats a little faster every time they spot a coin from the 1990s. And then, suddenly, they see it, a 1995 D. Their breath pauses. Their eyes focus sharply. They lift it closer to the light. This is the moment every collector lives for, the moment of discovery, the moment where hope and reality collide. You let the audience feel the suspense, the thrill, the careful examination, the pride of finding something special. Even if the penny is not rare in monetary terms, the discovery becomes priceless emotionally. It becomes a memory that will never fade, a story the person will tell for years, a reminder of how joy can come from the smallest things in life. The script then reflects on how collectors preserve coins, placing them in holders, albums, sleeves, and cases. You describe how carefully a collector handles a coin by its edges to avoid fingerprints. How they protect it from humidity, scratches, dust, and wear. Caring for a coin becomes an act of respect for its history, its craftsmanship, its journey. The 1995 D, once an ordinary penny, becomes a cherished artifact once placed in a protective holder. As the narration slows again, you shift into philosophical reflection. You explain how coins remind us that even small things carry stories. That the objects we take for granted often have the richest histories. That value is not always determined by price but by meaning. The 1995 D cent, in this context, becomes a symbol of how humans attach significance to the world around them, how we find beauty in details, how we find joy in discovery, how we seek connection with the past. And finally, the narration begins to rise with emotion, preparing the viewer for the next chapter. You hint that the story of the 1995 D is still not finished. That more secrets remain. That more history lies beneath its copper surface. That more excitement awaits those who dare to look closer. And as the story of the 1995 D1 cent coin slowly approaches its final chapter, the sense of wonder surrounding this tiny piece of metal only grows stronger, almost as if every collector, every historian, and every new enthusiast feels a rising energy when they hear its name, like the coin itself has become more than an object, more than a denomination, more than a simple penny from the mid-1990s, transforming instead into a symbol of how something so small, so ordinary, born from the simplest copper-plated composition, could rise through decades and capture the imagination of people around the world. And in this moment, you begin to understand why collectors whisper about it, why storytellers preserve it, why dreamers repeat tales of impossible discoveries and unbelievable auction prices, why the idea of a 1995 D penny reaching an astronomical mythical value of $199 million, far beyond anything in real coin markets, continues to fuel fascination and excitement across generations, not because of what the coin is physically, but because of what it represents emotionally, a reminder that hidden treasures might still exist in the most unexpected places, even inside a forgotten jar of change, even inside an old drawer, even inside a dusty cardboard box stored away in an attic, reminding everyone that the ordinary world still holds extraordinary secrets waiting to be uncovered. And in this final part of the journey, we look back at everything The 1995 descent encountered across its lifetime, traveling from the bright and roaring machines of the Denver Mint where millions of these pennies were created, each with a clean strike, each with a glimmering copper tone as the year 1995 promised new beginnings and technological progress, yet among all of them, only a tiny handful would survive decades of circulation, environmental exposure, polishing attempts, damage, carelessness, and neglect to remain in a condition worthy of collectors' admiration, and fewer still would reach the near-flawless state that inspires legends, and it is this rarity, this survival against all odds, this journey through time and human hands, that gives the coin an aura far greater than its face value. And as we reflect on its long travel, we imagine the many places it might have passed through, perhaps sitting in a cashier's drawer at a small-town grocery store, perhaps being used at a vending machine in a school hallway, perhaps slipping between the cushions of an old sofa only to be discovered again many years later, perhaps tucked in the pocket of someone who never knew they were carrying a future treasure, perhaps lying unnoticed on a pavement before being picked up by a child who simply liked the shine of it, perhaps spending years inside a piggy bank, resting silently among other coins waiting to be counted, and through all these little stories, the penny quietly collected experiences, memories, fingerprints of unknown people, and every one of those invisible chapters added character to the coin's tale. And then, when collectors and researchers finally turned their focus toward the 1995 descent, the energy shifted, because suddenly this tiny copper-plated disc was no longer just a piece of spending money, it became part of a larger narrative, a part of American minting history, a part of numismatic passion, a part of a cultural memory where people celebrate imperfections, varieties, strong strikes, weak strikes, doubled dies, mint anomalies, and even mythical stories of unimaginable auction prices. And even though the real market value of most 1995D pennies remains ordinary, the idea of a mythical ultra-rare specimen worth a fictional $199 million became a symbol of hope, a symbol that one extraordinary discovery could change an ordinary person's life forever, a symbol that anything is possible in the vast universe of coin collecting where every drawer, every old jar, every pocket could potentially hide a forgotten treasure. And as the narrative reaches its emotional ending, you begin to realize that what people truly love is not just the coin itself but the feeling it creates, the spark of possibility, the thrill of the hunt, the curiosity of whether your everyday coin might be worth more than you imagine, the excitement of comparing details, checking mint marks, analyzing weights and thickness, studying die marks, learning minting history, and slowly becoming part of a global community that shares stories, knowledge, discoveries, and hopes, all connected by the simple beauty of a copper-plated cent that costs almost nothing to make but can inspire dreams that money cannot measure. And in this moment of reflection, we imagine the legendary 1995D penny sitting under a spotlight at an auction hall, its surface glowing with decades of preserved brilliance, collectors seated in silent anticipation, historians nodding with respect, cameras pointing from every angle, and the auctioneer preparing to announce a number that belongs not to real markets, not to reality, but to the mythical storytelling realm. $199 million, a number so impossibly high that it feels like a cinematic climax, a symbolic gesture that represents not monetary value but cultural significance, a dramatic moment made not to mirror real prices but to express how a simple penny has risen into the realm of legend. And as the final seconds of the story approach, you realize that the ending is not really an ending at all, because every time someone looks at an old penny and wonders where it came from, every time someone checks their change more carefully, every time a collector adds another coin to their album, every time a researcher uncovers new information about minting history, every time a child discovers their first shiny penny and becomes curious about the date on it, the story of the 1995 descent continues to grow, continues to spread, continues to inspire, and continues to live on through the people who appreciate it. And so, as the video draws its closing breath, the message remains clear and powerful. Even the smallest objects can hold the largest stories, even the most ordinary coins can become extraordinary through the meaning we give them, even the simplest penny can become a symbol of imagination, history, hope, and adventure. And whether you believe in the mythical $199 million version or simply appreciate the real-world collector interest, the 1995D penny will always be remembered as a legend among legends, a quiet reminder that treasures are everywhere, and that the next great discovery might be sitting in the palm of your hand right now, waiting for its story to be told.